to put on my mask soon after saying hi to you because there are two nice gentlemen in the studio trying to fix all this for me so that we can get it going. So they are also members of our AGO, so you will see them in some concerts and stuff. And also MSM students, so that's, works very well. So welcome to our not very first organ webinar, but it's the first one done live and recorded in the organ studio, so we have some teething problems. But never mind. We're going to go through an overview of what hymn playing is and what hymns are, because our understanding of hymns maybe is not the same as oh, I'm looking at the wrong place. Okay, look at the camera. I wear my mask first. Okay. So when we think of hymns, we always think of old music and the dreary or strophic or whatever. In a way, it's true, it's strophic, and it's many of them are old. So let's see our first slide. This one. First slide. Are hymns and songs the same? Okay. We think that everything in our hymnal is a hymn. Actually, no. A hymn is a sort of song, but what is a hymn is it has meter. For example, Amazing Grace is 8686. I'm going to play. Can you hear? The syllables, they're counting syllables, okay? So you can interchange hymns with the same meter to the same music. But for songs, you can't do that. For example, if you play Shout to the Lord, you can't fix anything else with that. So in some ways, hymns and songs have some differences, but some of them overlap so much that you don't know whether it's a hymn or a song. But never mind, that's just details. We just want to today focus on traditional hymn playing. That means when you open up the hymnal, you see SATB, 4 parts, and then there are hymns which are poetry set to stanzas and repeating melodies and stuff. Okay, so let's flip the page. Let's listen to types of hymns that are found in many of our hymnals. Even if you're a pianist or just an organist or pianist or don't play any keyboards instruments, it's good to know these because they will help you to interpret the hymn in a way to help the congregation sing. Because our job as church musicians is to enable the congregation to sing with understanding the hymn text so that everyone can worship God together. So when we play hymns, as a church musician, we try to enable people. We don't show off or display the organ or anything like that. That's beside the point. Okay, let us hear some types of hymns. One type of hymn we often hear, especially in Roman Catholic churches and maybe Anglican churches, are modal music based on Gregorian chant or other kinds of chant. Let's hear Veni Emmanuel and hear how long the line is. Can you click the Veni Emmanuel? Okay, looks like it's Article D, not Veni. Never mind. Carry on. That there are not very many angular phrases in this. let's hear another kind of a modal hymn. King's Fold number 2. We'll just listen to 5-10 seconds excerpts. Feisterberg, next one. Okay, so notice this modal and chant-based music have very long lines. So when you play our hymns, we need to look at the text to make sure that we're not breaking halfway. Because we run out of fingers or anything, we need to help the congregation to imagine that they are well-trained choirs and that they can finish the whole line. Okay, so another kind of hymn is a metrical, not metrical, but shorter phrase hymns. The German Lutherans were the ones that started this, and later on the Calvinists, the root of the Presbyterian Church. So German Lutheran hymns, the early ones, often had metricals, even pulses, because they needed the congregation to sing along. So the congregation couldn't sing so long like that. Okay, let's hear Ein Feisterberg, the German Reformation hymn. Let's hear. Here are quite short compared to the ones before that. This is because the German phrases, when they were originally in German, they were probably phrased like that. So when we translate to English, it's not always the same. Okay, now let's go on to the ones that are focusing more on text, like the Calvinist hymns. We all know Old Hundred, Praise God from whom all blessings flow. Let's hear the Old Hundred. It's based on the words, so the melody is not so pretty. Okay. also notice that the line is simple, and when you need a breath, there is a breath right there. So these kind of syllabic hymns and those that are focused on text, you should also play it differently from the ones that are modal like you originally heard. Okay, let's carry on. You notice that the coming are quite different from each other, because in the 20th century, different groups of Christians use their own hymnody, and it reflects the culture and the geographical region. Let's hear Precious Lord Take My Hand. See how they do this hymn, which is in the Methodist hymnal, but we don't often play it the way they're supposed to sound. Let's hear.
30 days. Okay, 1 second.
Okay, notice that we may call this a song and not a hymn, but it's metrical, and you can repeat many verses, and it's quite a normal meter. And you actually have to play it like this because it's from this tradition. Let's hear another one which we all know, Standing on the Premises. Okay, so sounds familiar. Our churches often play like this. So we are doing very well in terms of cultural context. Okay, now we go to the modern hymn, Christ Be Our Light. Play.
Listen, we found this product at $1.50 and
Morning for light, we wait in darkness, longing for truth.
Okay, so you have heard all these songs and hymns. They actually can be played on the organ if we put some effort into it. But we have to understand the background and the style first, so that we won't make the modern hymn sound old-fashioned, and we won't make the modal hymn sound choppy like Standing on the Promises. So that's what we're doing this webinar about. It's not to teach you exactly how to play the hymns, but at least come to a understanding or explore different ideas. Okay, so now we go to the teaching bit. If you don't agree, just object is quite okay, because there are many types of hymn playing styles and many ways to approach a hymn. So if you were in England, they will teach you something completely different from the way if you go to the US or the Germany or France or something. But one thing people will all agree on, you need the principal sound in the organ to carry the tune, because without the principal sound, nobody can hear the tune or leading. So the principal sound of the organ sounds like this. If I were to play this on a flute, you can't hear it. If I were to play on a reed, like an oboe, it's a little bit irritating after a while. So you need principal 8 and a principal 4, which is an octave. Later we'll see in our PowerPoint how to do all this registration. So you need these two stops always on your organ, the principal 8 and the principal 4, which is sometimes called octave. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. We gather together. Before we play a hymn, we will always have to read and study the text. Let's see this little hymn, if you can. No, this one. Yeah. See this little hymn? Look at the text. What is it about? To me, it's talking to ourselves as a corporate body. We are gathering together, and then and then that's the first verse. The second one is beside us, and God is ordaining us and maintaining us. So it's still talking about us. The third one is suddenly directed to God. So this hymn has two directions. One is like talking to ourselves, and the third one, talking to God. So when you register, you may want to change the sound for the third verse, so that the congregation notices that the focus is different. So our job as organists is to point out what the text is saying. Okay, so that's the text. So the hymn is actually the text. The hymn is not the tune. The hymn is a text set to the tune and 4 parts. Okay, so how to approach this? If you're a pianist, you normally, like me, I was trained as a pianist, we would just chunk the chords. But as an organist, our sound can carry on indefinitely. So we need to plan when to breathe. So if you look at the first verse, the phrase ends on blessing. So we try not to play. Why would we be tempted to do that? It's because we run out of fingers every time we change our hand position. So we must try very hard to play legato so that we can play smoothly. Okay, so because the hymn is written in 4 choral parts, you may want to also read the other lines. For example, the bass note. So that's about line. And another interesting characteristic about this hymn is the pulse. 3, 1. So we have to emphasize the upbeat. So we don't play like this. Sounds very flat. See? So I hope you can see, I hope you can hear. So when we introduce pulse in the hymns, the congregation will tend to follow along, because we are creatures who somehow respond to rhythm. So we will find, if you look back, as I sometimes do when I'm accompanying large churches, I see the people swaying back and forth in uniformly, then I know they are listening to me. If they're not listening to me, then I'll change my articulation, which I'll show you later on in the slides. Okay, so first thing is study the text so that you know when to breathe and what the text is about. So you can plan your registration. Registration means how to choose our stops. Read the 4 parts to see whether, you know, any difficulties, like suddenly there's a big jump or something. Sing the hymn, which is a good idea, so that you don't play too fast or too slow. So if you play too slow, it's like this. You run out of breath already, unless you are King's College from London or anything. So if you play too fast also, you'll get a bit tired. So many churches nowadays sing too fast because they think fast is exciting, but no, fast is tiring. That's my catchphrase for the day. Okay, any questions? Can type on the chat or unmute yourself for the moment. Any questions? Okay, let's flip to the next page. Beginning hymn playing. Next one. Okay, articulation. What's that? Articulation is how to play the notes. For example, let's see the little hymn 366 over there. What if I play like this? It sounds horrible. But you look at the text, Jesus, thy boundless love to me. It's about love, God's love. So you don't have to scream out the tune. And the tune is also not very exciting. It looks very smooth. So you may want to follow how the hymn looks. Okay, so for this articulation, we want smoother. So it has a pulse of 3. 1, 2, 3, 1. So you have to, lean a bit on the first note. Okay, so here's some practical things, which I already wrote on the example. You can tie the common notes in the inner voices. So don't like this. It sounds very chunky, it doesn't help the hymn. Okay, so if you tie the strong to weak beats, which one is the strong beat? The first one. 1, 2, 3. So you can. And then you don't tie, you see the third bar, don't tie to, okay, love to me. So don't tie to the me. So not like this. So that suddenly it creates a syncopation. So we don't want syncopation in the hymn if the hymn is not written that way. We want to follow what the hymn is written. Okay, so you can tie inner notes, which means the alto, and the tenor notes. So if you play the 3 notes, it's like this. Okay, so the upper note, which is what people are singing, should always be played the way you want them to sing. So you don't want them to sing, so you don't play like that. Okay, it sounds very obvious, but we never think about this. Okay, for people who are playing pedal, since we don't have pedal right now, let's use bass coupler. See this bass coupler here? If you own one of these digital organs or your church has, it's normally called bass coupler. On some organs is over here or over here. Sometimes it's called bass to pedal coupler, this one. It brings the pedal sound up to the manuals, see? But it stops here. No more already. So it's like what you call bandage. If you can't manage it, you pull it for the service, but don't rely on it for years and years, because it will fail you one day and you will end up playing the middle note, and then the pastor will scold you for playing rubbish. But you say, no, I played the right note. It's actually the organ's fault. It's supposed to help you through trying times. Okay, so let's play this with the bass coupler. Try. Okay, so that's the example that I've played. with the inner notes tied and the melody played as is. Okay, phrasing. Lift at the end of the phrase, allowing for one beat rest. So it's 1, 2, off. Okay, so if it sounds like a lot when you are lifting and you are listening at the organ, but the congregation needs that much gap in the sound because your sound is carrying from the speakers or the pipes to where they're sitting, which is quite far away. So if you go to St. Andrew's Cathedral, they lift quite often. You can hear it in the front, but you can't really hear it later on in some parts of the church because the nave is very long. And in the Good Shepherd Cathedral also, the reverb is quite live, so they'll do a lot of lifting up. But in Methodist churches, most of us, except Kampong Kapor, you have to lift, but not too much because it's all kaput, unfortunately. Okay. So whenever you need a breath, calculate about 1 beat breath. If you find it's too much, then give them maybe half or something, but lift up purposefully. Okay. Now registration is very important. The third point. Registration means how do I choose the stops? We don't want to, okay, using this hymn again, we don't want to play it like this. Because this loud registration doesn't help convey the meaning of the text nor the mood of it. So we don't want to use things like mixtures and trumpets and those kind of loud looking stops, which we will explore afterwards. We should use stops that are milder and not too bright, okay? And don't use vibratos. If you notice in your Zoom here account with your headphones on, the sound is very irritating if you hear this a lot. It's just kind of wobbly and you can't really hear the pitch anymore. So that's what the congregation hears if you do too much. Just keep the sound clean and without wobbliness, unless you are playing by yourself, like during communion people are mumbling or something, that's fine. Okay. Okay, tempo we discussed just now. Not too fast and not too slow. If you don't know what that means, well, I didn't know for a long time. My teacher said, sing the phrase with clear words to some imaginary person 15 feet away from you. If you don't run out of breath, that's probably a good tempo. So if you run out of breath, is too slow. If you got lots of breath or you feel like your mouth is tired from pronouncing words, then it's too fast, too syllabic. So normally that's a good gauge. But also realistically, you look at the age of the congregation and what time service you're playing. Because if you're over 50, like me, if you get up in the morning, maybe you're not in the mood to sing so fast. If you're a young person who can't get up in the morning but have to go morning service, you also cannot sing too fast. But if you play 11 o'clock service with families and impatient teenagers, you have to sing faster or else they'll get very irritated. So there's you have to look at all these things. Okay. Introduction. Yeah, this is a sticky issue. Some people say play the introduction all the way in the hymn. But let's say you know the hymn very well, you're going to get very impatient with the introduction, you play the whole way. So one way around it is to improvise something. But if you're not wanting to improvise, you could cut short your introduction. So for example, that little piece, Jesus Die Lang. That's enough for the congregation to fiddle with their books open. If they can do it nowadays, we don't know. And they will remember how the tune goes, and they'll know how to start. Some people play introductions at the end. But then you forget how it goes in the beginning. Then half the congregation's not singing. So it's always a good idea to start the hymn and give it an ending so that people can hear the end of the hymn. Any questions yet? Okay, great. Am I going too fast? You can say slow down. Okay, now I'll stop talking because I did a lot of many hours trying to record myself on the video, and so we might as well make it worth it. Let's listen to, don't play it, Take My Life and Let It Be. This is an example of the hymn which I've marked out, which we have just discussed. The strong beats. So how do you know strong and weak beat? If you were to recite the text, take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to thee. That's about the breath that I can manage. I can't sing any slower than that. And if I sing any faster than that, I will be quite tired. But that's the pulse of the text. Take my life. So you can lean into the chord. So don't play like this. That's not very nice, not very musical. So if you lean into the strong beats, the congregation can feel the pulse, and that's what keeps them singing together, and it sounds melodious, and they will end up looking at the text. Okay? And then I also tied some inner voices. If you see the alto voice, the C's are tight, so strong to weak beats are tight. And then shorten the repeated note by half of its value. You see the let it be, and then there's a minim. So you can lift up half of the value, which is crotchet. 1, 2, 3, up. Then quavers 1 and 2 and. Okay, if I don't play half the beat, this is how it sounds. I bet you can't hear properly, right? So we are separated by space, you can't hear properly, so the congregation can't hear properly either. So it's good to calculate the rest. So that's why a lot of people say organ is such a mechanical instrument. How do you make music out of it? It's because with a lot of calculation, and you have to, then it becomes a musical. You just have to deal with it. That's the way it is, unfortunately. Okay, then at the end of the stanza, before you go to the next one, it's good to give the congregation time to breathe. Otherwise, the second verse they'll go, feed and let them be. They miss the first bar because they can't finish breathing. So at the end, sorry, let's try again. 1, 2, breathe. Okay, some churches do like this. It's hardly any breath, and some people will be delayed in their re-entry into the second verse. So let's hear how I recorded myself playing this one. Let's hear the recording. Okay, hope you are okay with that kind of hymn playing. Okay, it's very basic. We're not talking even. Is my mic on? Okay, it's not even talking about improv or anything like that. Okay, next slide. Next slide. Okay, so like some of us will ask, oh no, so difficult, what am I going to do now? You can start more easily by doing simpler things. You can play in octaves. Then you can get used to the organ or how the organ sounds like, and then you can play the rest of the chords yourself. But it gives you confidence to start at least. So, then you can also play in two voices, so you can play soprano and bass, which is quite good because the congregation needs the melody and the bass to get going. Then when you're more confident, you can play three voices, and then you can play in four voices. Let's hear the example of the next hymn, which I did, Ebenezer, Once to Every Man and Nation. I put that on that hymn. I think it sounds okay as even an example of an introduction. So when you play introductions, you don't have to play it all the way through how it looks. You can also do this kind of layering effect. Let's listen to this. Okay, so you could use this example to start some of your hymns if you want variety in your introductions. Or you could play your hymns all the way through using one or two of these if you're not so confident at the piano or the organ. Because it has two things if you do this. You have confidence and the congregation feels your confidence. It has pulse and it has the melody. So these three things the congregation needs to feel before they start to sing. Otherwise, you'll find that you're playing by yourself or somebody's mumbling, and we don't want that. Okay? Any questions? Okay, next page. You can see this famous organist Todd Wilson do something like that on Rejoice the Lord is King, our very familiar song. And he'll play with large registration and occasional portions where he just plays octaves. So you can hear very clearly the two kinds of textures, the melody and then the chorus registration for the congregation. Let's hear how he does this variety of textures in his hymn. Okay, so after playing his hymn, after playing his hymn, he goes into an interlude. So all these are types of hymn playing. You have to craft your introduction, which is what he did. Then he played it steadily and normally for the congregation. Then he went off to an interlude. So normally after the interlude, there will be a reharmonization, which means that he'll change and enrich the harmonies on the using probably the last verse, which is the most vibrant, so that the congregation will sing more vibrantly and feel the emotion of the hymn. So all this is part of hymn playing, which if we have time in future webinars, we can start to explore. But today we'll just do basic things. Okay, if there's no question, let's just run through stop families. Next page. If you attended the first webinar by Angela Lim, she went through briefly the principles and the reeds and strings and mutations and all this. It's good to remind ourselves, but I put it on colors so you can see the red color means use sparingly, like your chilies, you know. The green, the khaki colors are your earth tones. It's like your foundation stops. Those are called foundation stops. Principal, string, and flutes are called foundation stops. You can use them almost all the time in your hymns in various combinations. So don't use all of the principals and all of the string and all the flute. Just kind of mix and match. So if you want a tubby tone, put more flute. If you want a thinner tone, put string. But the principal must always be there, at least one. Then the compound stops, if you see 5 squares down, mixture and shaft and cymbal. Notice the numbers are different than the normal 8 numbers, 8 and 4 and stuff. Use them sparingly also because they brighten your ensemble. So you can use more foundations, the tan and blue one, light blue ones, and less of the red, yellow, and bright blue ones. Okay, so that's a color coding for you. Let's hear some effect of these. If I play with principal 8, principal 8 and 4, that sounded like that. If I added a string, it's not much difference. If I only play string 8, it sounds like this. So it really can't carry anything. If I play with only flute 8 and 4, no congregation can hear that. So we need principal 8 and 4. You can add some flutes to make it fatter. See, with the flute, without flute, no, we can hear a note. Okay, maybe you just pretend. Okay, can hear with flute, without flute. Just a bit thinner, okay? Once I add a reed, it sounds very different. So the reeds are very spicy, so-called. Add them sparingly. The compound stops, the mixture and all that, you only add it later on. And the mutations, the bottom ones, you hardly add it in your combination stops like this. We're talking about stops now that you're using for accompanying the congregation. We're not talking about organ pieces and stuff, okay? Let's flip over. What's the next slide? Next slide. Oh, this one. Okay. Okay, fine. So when we play a hymn, we need to have principal 8, principal 8 and 4, and then you need, if you're playing on the grade manual, the main manual is called grade, then you need grade to pedal, because the pedal must also have the same kind of sound. See? Okay, now the pedal doesn't sound very low because I didn't actually add any pedal stop. So now I add a 16-foot stop, like that. Now you got a booming sound. So this is your minimum congregational accompaniment sound. Okay, let's say it's so boring, I want to add some more brightness and happiness. So I add principal 2. So now my hands have got principal 8, 4, and 2. Let's say I'm so excited, I want to sing louder. I have to make the organ brighter. So the next one would be mixture. So if I don't know if you can see, but I'm adding in terms of decreasing numbers. Principal 8, 4, 2, and then the next one up there is mixture. So this is the order you add it. So it's like this. Somehow the pedal can match. It's because I've got grade to pedal. It brings the sound of the grade down to the pedal. See, if I take it off, I can't hear anymore. So I need grade to pedal to bring the sound of the manual to the pedal. So they got 4 equal sounding parts. I didn't say 4 similar sounding parts. I said 4 equal sounding parts. Equal means it sounds equal in strength and somewhat the color also. Okay, so like this, the congregation will know which pitch to start on and how to sing. Okay, if I put principal 8 and I miss the 4 and I miss the 2, this is what it sounds like. Something wrong. I need the middle tone. Okay, now let's say I have a large instrument. I want to explore other colors. What else can I add? I'm going to use some sound from the swell. Swell has got oboe, has got trumpet, has got bassoon. I put swell to grade, and then I put the smallest one, the smallest of the reeds is the oboe, because the trumpet is so loud and the bassoon is very brassy. So I always add the smallest one first, so not to shock myself and everybody else until they stop singing. Okay, now what about my pedal? It's not matched anymore. I have to put swell to pedal. See? Okay, now I can play. Okay, let's say even that's not enough. I want to add some more sound. What else can I add? I add other reed families. I can add trumpet. Then I can add bassoon. So it sounds loud now, but it will work for the third verse. Let me play second verse to third verse, okay? Then you see whether you like it. So I don't put any reeds on yet. I just put principal 8, 4, 2, and mixture, the bright sound, and for the second verse, and I'm going to add reeds slowly, one by one, as I play the third verse. We add slowly one by one so that we don't have suddenly a wash of big sound in the reed and shock ourselves again. We never want to shock the congregation, because treat the congregation like sheep. We are sheep, we follow, we don't lead, we wait for somebody to tell us what to do. So if we don't know what we are doing, we look up and close our mouth and we stop singing. So we don't want that. We always remove doubt in the congregation so that they always sing with bright and clear voices. Okay, so now I'm going to add, I'm going to play the ending of the second verse, and then I'll slowly add the reeds one by one, and you see whether it works for you. Okay. So this is a sample of how you may add your registration, even if it's like you have the final verse and you want to build it up. It's quite okay to do that. Any comments or anything for me yet? Okay, no. Okay, there's a question. Can anyone want to say audibly what the question is? Because I can't really see.
Is there some reason why chorus is recommended and not the grade? principal chorus, I think.
The chorus is recommended for not the grade. What's that? Oh, use chorus registration means principal 842 mixture, and you play on the grade. That's what it means. If you mean choir manual, that's the third manual, but we don't accompany congregation on any other manual except the grade. So because the grade is the sound that speaks most clearly in the room, so grade and pedal. The swell seems far away, so you use it only for colors. The choir seems weaker than the grade, so we don't use it very often. We use it to accompany choir. That's why it's called choir manual. Traditionally speaking, the choir organ was near the actual choir singing in those traditional churches. So they just left it like this. In Germany, it's called Rock positive. That means the organ at the back, that you have rucksack. Rucksack means knapsack, backpack. Backpack means rucksack. Rock positive means positive at your back. So if next time you see the organ pictures, I know you can want to see any organ pictures. Show an organ, rock positive, see the Alma one. Okay, we are in my studio, which is a show and tell room. So see this Alma, can you see? You see the rock positive, the tiny organ there. If you were the player, your back would be Timmy point at the rock positive. That's at your back. So when you're playing that organ, you're very tiny. Point where the head would be, where the decoration is. No, below. Yeah, a bit. Yes, that's where your head will be. It's a huge organ. So that will be a rock positive, and then point upward. The top pipes are the pedal and grade pipes. So this organ has a capability to play antiphonal music because you can echo each other based on the space of the pipe. And you can see how large the organ is. You point to the pew. That's where you sit. It's really huge. Point at the bubble. That's a rock positive. If your head were there, your head will be on where the lace is, the balcony. Yes, that's. Yes, some of us have been there, they know. So this organ is another huge one. So those huge pedal towers are pedal and grade. And the one on top, point the top, is the swell. That's why swell is the most removed of all the manuals, and even on digital organs. Okay, on digital organs, you tend not to play accompaniment for congregation on swell. Does that answer your question? Okay. Now let's go towards articulation. Flip page. Flip page. Okay. Oh, for 1,000 tongues to sing. Some hymns remind you of other instruments playing. Let's see how this hymn sounds with brass playing. Let's play the YouTube. Yep, correct. Okay, so we can also play in this fanfare kind of manner for the congregation. We have to play with a detached manner. It will have a different effect from the normal way we play our hymns. It will make the congregation feel more, hymn more rousing and more festive, and they'll sing it happily and more excitedly. Let's listen to me playing that. Next page. With two registrations. The first registration will be articulately with a big registration, and the second one will be the normal way we've been talking about how to play hymns, legato and less sound in the organ, less reeds and all that. Okay. So the first one we have played detached. The second one I joined some of the inner notes. That's why it sounds more legato. Okay, next one. Let's go through some registration building ideas. So depending on where you learn the organ in Europe or in the US or here, there are different ways to approach the hymn registration. If you have a very small pipe organ, you can't look for principal 842 mixture and read and all that, because that might be all the stops you have on the organ. So you can use a clear block registration, like this is called the basic chorus. Something 8, something 4, and something 2. And one of them must be a principal. So this is what it sounds like. 8, 4, and 2 flutes. It just sounds sweet and clear. And this is a happy hymn, so it will work. Let's play it on a different manual. Flute 8, principal 4, principal 2 on the choir. Okay, now I play the same thing on the grade. Principal 8, 4, and 2. So there are 3 principals. So you notice that the same sort of registration on different families creates a different effect. The one on the swell is cute. The one on the positives just sounds kind of middle. The one on the grade. So that's why we try to play on the grade manual on the organ. So if I couple it to the pedal, for pedal, that's quite okay already. So 8, 4, 2, this basic chorus is called basic chorus. 8, 4, 2, one of them bring a principal. Usually the principal 4 would be more important. This is something you can get by if the organ you have in church is small but clear sounding. If it's a huge organ, don't do that, because you'll be voiced softly and the congregation won't be able to hear you. If you have a large instrument in the church, use the principal 8, 4, 2 on the grade. Okay? Let's flip the page. So, using principal 8 and 4, what a friend we have in Jesus. It's quite clear already. So let's say I want to change color because I've got 3 verses. What am I going to do? I can add a reed on the oboe. So let's, can we play the video? Let's hear how this sounds like with the oboe on the second stanza. No, not that one. Oh, okay. Just put me back on then. Okay. Okay, and so we've already heard just now when I was demonstrating. The next slide. So notice now they become triangles. You notice the icon I put is triangles. The base the bottom is big and the top is small. So the 8s are more at the bottom, and as the numbers get smaller, you use less of it. Okay, so like a Christmas tree, so that you have enough foundation for whatever bright things you're putting at the top. So think of it as Christmas tree. The Christmas tree is triangular like this. At the bottom, you have the big baubles. The top, you put the little twinkly things and those tinsel stuff. If you put the big baubles on the top, the whole tree is going to fall down. So it's the same way like this. More 8s, less 4s, very few 2s, and one mixture or one reed at a time. So let's listen to this Joy to the World. Just now you heard it like this with 8/4/2. Now let's hear it with this principal chorus with mixture. So what I tried to do was I played a little bit articulately so that you can feel the duple pulse. Pum, 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 not ta, 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 not like that. Okay, sorry about my singing. Okay, so these are types of registration that you would normally use when you're accompanying congregation. Then the last, not the last, but another way you can do is combining two triangles together. Next page. The pyramid style large registration. That means you do both things, both of the ideas in the grade as well as the swell. And the swell will have the reed. So you can combine two of them by putting swell to grade and swell to pedal. So it sounds like this with Holy Holy. I'll just play it now. I'll just play. I reduce the reeds. I'll put back the reeds. So I added the reeds as the hymn went on, and added the 32 foot in the pedal, which has a rumbling effect, and I added the reed in the pedal. So that creates a reed chorus within the main chorus, if that makes any sense. So this is how you do large registration, but don't play large registration for the whole hymn because it's tiring to the ear, so you have to vary it. Okay, so for the live presentation, I'm finished for now. Any questions before we do the last video? Any questions? We're on time. Any questions? Okay, I don't know what. Okay, there's no question. Is there a question? Okay, the last slide not last slide, but last thing to learn for today. Let's flip the slide. Is what the American Guild of Organist Teaching videos are telling you. How to use registrations for contemplative and jubilant hymns. So he's going to play these two hymns and basically tell you what I've already told you, but he has a more interesting way of telling you, and he has a pipe organ for different colors. So shall we watch this? It takes about 5 minutes. And then we'll have question and last closing remarks.
Now that we've learned about stops, the pitches, as well as the colors of stops, we're ready to pull several stops into a combination that spans all divisions of the organ. And this is what you're going to do when you start to register, that's choose your stops, for playing of hymns. Now, when an organist plays a hymn, the primary concern is that the organ is supportive of congregational singing, but it shouldn't overwhelm congregational singing. So it's a fine line, and it's sort of an art. You'll get used to it, but you draw just enough to support the congregation, and the level of support's going to vary. One of the ways that the support level varies is in different styles of hymns. For this example and demonstration, I have one contemplative hymn. In general, contemplative hymns are prayer-like, and they require less support because the congregation may not need that much more support. But in a jubilant hymn, you're going to want to pull more stops, have more volume, and give the congregation more support. But always bear in mind, don't over-support or overwhelm the congregation. Let's start with a contemplative hymn. I'm going to pull stops on the swell, grate, and pedal. This is what most church organs have, 2 manuals and pedal. We're going to start with the swell. Here I have 4 stops drawn, a 16-foot flute, an 8-foot string, a 4-foot flute, and an 8-foot principal sound, this one called Geigen diapason. Over here in the grate, I have pulled, again, 4 stops, harmonic flute, Dolken, these are both 8, the principal 8, and the flute 4-foot. The swell stops are going to be playing along with the grate because I'll couple swell to the grate. I'm also going to couple swell to the pedal. And in the pedal division, I will be drawing 5 stops, 3 16-foot flute stops and 2 8-foot flute stops. Altogether, when played on the grate, this is the sound I get.
This one is the free.
And so it is supportive but not overwhelming. Now, by contrast, let's take a jubilant hymn, a hymn of praise. And we're going to take this basic registration now and add stops to it. There's a lot of stops here that aren't on yet. And so we're going to see these added, and I'm going to add them gradually. I've actually programmed the pistons, and we're going to talk about pistons in a later lesson, but I've preset so that I can call up all of these additions to get us from the contemplative hymn to the jubilant hymn. And so listen to it as I add the stops gradually. Listen. There were 5 additions of stops there. First, I added in the pedal a 4-foot flute, another 8-foot flute. In the swell, I added a 4-foot principal. This word principal and the word octave are almost interchangeable. It's really a matter of some semantics, but they have the same sound. And then over here, I've added the 4-foot octave. Octaves, principals, those stops that have that quality at 4-foot pitch are wonderful for leading singing because the ear hears that range very strongly and prominently, and it helps people actually to sing. So after that initial addition, I added some more, another 8-foot and a 2-foot diapason sound in the grate. The next I added was the mixture in the swell, the 8-foot flute, and the 2 2/3 Nazard, which is a mutation stop that bolsters some of the harmonics of the 8-foot and 4-foot pitches. Then I go one more step and I finally add the mixture, the furniture, on the grate. Now, all of the stops I added in the swell have also been added to the pedal because we still have the swell to pedal coupled and the swell to grate coupled. And there you are. 2 examples of how to register differently depending on the style of hymn.
Are they listening?
No, they're not listening.
Huh? Finish already?
Just finish. Just finish. Yeah, just finish. The lesson is just finished, so I'm going to...
Okay. Okay. Okay, am I on now? Okay. Hello again. So, there's a question. Do you always couple grate to pedal when you're playing on the grate? It depends on the organ. If your digital organ is very boomy in your pedal division, then you don't put grate to pedal. But the stops that you put, principal 8 and 4, must be put on the swell as well, and they couple swell to pedal. Okay, so let's put grate. Okay, let's put principal 8 and 4 with pedal. If I don't like it, I can put flute, string 8 on the swell, and a principal 4, and couple that to pedal instead. See? Then I still can play. It's still sort of okay. So that means the idea is you always need to have principal 8 and 4 in your manuals, usually using the strongest manual, which is grate. If your organ is voiced in such a way that you can't use it to the pedal because very boomy, you do the same thing on another manual, like the swell, and you couple that down to the pedal. So your pedal still has the sound of the principal 8 and 4 as opposed to this. See? Right? So as long as you hear something similar, is quite okay. Does that answer your question? Anyone else got a question? Otherwise, in about 3-4 minutes, I'll wrap up. Nobody else got a question? Oh, there was another question about, do you use our 32 foot in the pedal all the time or only at the last stanza? The answer also, again, is depends. Because in the Anglican tradition, if you're in a cathedral or large church, the 32 foot very soft stop is almost always on in the pedal because it creates a rumbling effect. Let me lay this straight. In our studio we don't have rumbling effect, but you can imagine the kind of hymns. I have the 32 foot on. If I take it off, I don't know if you can hear, but there's a slight rumble going on. So it's to just create a bottom effect. The cathedral sound has to resonate around the room. So it depends on the tradition. But definitely, if you're on a dry acoustic, don't put it on all the time. It's a bit annoying, and it covers the lines in your hymns. Any other question? Have you ever noticed any differences in the way the organ is played in different denominations? Yes, this is why we had the first slide with the different types of hymns. Remember the first slide we had modal, evangelical, whatever, those things. So depends on which tradition you're in. You have to follow the culture of the church. So if the church is high Catholic or high Anglican, you tend to play this sort of hymns with long lines, and you have to play legato like this. If you're in a Methodist church in Singapore, we tend to sing a bit fast, like this. You play like this in England, maybe they'll frown at you, they'll probably like this. We can't do that here. It's somehow we are impatient, it's our culture. But in the US, they may have a large variety of ways of singing, which we will do in the next webinar if there's enough interest. So the next webinar, which I will do, will address different sorts of hymns, and you can do different introductions like this. Something like that, simple things that are based on motifs of hymns. So we'll do introductions and how to play different hymns, like play with the right hand solo. On interludes and things like that. Okay, any other question? If not, we need to wrap up. Okay, there's a question that says, does that mean the pedal stop supplement what is coupled to the pedals? Oh yeah, so if you find that the bass support in your pedal is not enough, by all means add some more 16ths. So don't just leave one tiny flute on. You can add principal, you can add bombard. It just creates a different color and support to the rest of your manual sounds. Okay, next slide. Okay, let's, after this I will stay around for 1 minute if there's any urgent questions, but let's close up this session. Next slide. There's a self-help page. Okay, there's a self-help page. If you need to know how to play the organ and you can't get here to have organ lesson, or you can't get out of your house because of, you know, whatever group size requirements, check out the last two things by Thayer and Joyce Jones. Joyce Jones' book is very good. It's bite-sized for adults, so they don't have to go through all the nitty-gritty. It's very fast-moving, but it gets you going. Joyce Jones' King of Instruments can be bought on bookshops like Sheet Music Plus. And The Art of Organ Playing, the one above that, is a free resource, but it's a bit old-fashioned, so you just have to, you know, deal with all the lingo and all that. Okay, then the rest of the online sources which I put in front here are for you to read. It's basically what I said, but in a different manner and more illustrations and examples and all that. And Organ Tutor 101 is good for pianists who are trying to play the organ but have some difficulties and challenges. So use that. Okay, next page. In case you missed it, this is not our first webinar. You can start all the way from the very beginning if you want to click those websites. And especially if you're interested in organ hymn playing, look at the one by Angela Lim, the one we just finished a few weeks ago. Because this is like the application to what she started. And so the next webinar I will do, if we have interest, is to do different varieties of hymns and how to do improv for intros and all that. And next slide. And thanks for joining us. If you are interested to contribute in the MSM Ministries, please zap the Pay Now thing. And the organ chapter would like to thank you for attending also. And I'd like to thank Mr. Eugene Yeo and Ong Tim Min for being here. They are trying to fix buttons while I'm talking so fast. So I'm very glad for them to be here and spending the afternoon with us. And thank you for coming today. Okay, next page. Next page. Okay, so this is what's coming up. Okay, so those of us who have to leave, thanks for coming. You can leave and I'll stay here for 1 minute for any pressing questions. Bye.
There's some questions from Constance.
Oh, okay, Constance,
Constance Leong. Yeah.
try to
But,
read.
yeah. Sorry. Further up the chat.
At BRMC, what would you recommend to use as basic registration and add according to the type of hymn, like a Julian hymn?
Oh, for people at BRMC, my registration is stuck there. You can actually look at it, but in the organ. But you can follow what I recommended. You use the one with the triangles. So the principal 8 and 4, but you have to couple many principal 8s and 4s from different manuals because the organ there is quite big. So different principal 8s and 4s and a few flutes. You can consult our colorful chart for which one is flute. And then you add a bit of oboe, the oboe, to that sound. And then you can build up your triangles from there. So in Baccarat, I've already set a sequence of soft to loud registration, so you can experiment with the buttons. But basically it follows what I've said. So hope that helps. Any other urgent question?
Another question from Constance.
I see.
2 hands on one menu. Oh, yes, we have both hands playing on one menu because if you notice the hymn is written as ATB, it's in 4 choral parts. So we want all the 4 lines to sound similar in strength. So if we play like Yamaha organ style, one hand up, one hand down, it may not work. But then again, that one you have to wait for the next webinar and I demonstrate to you how that may work. But generally speaking, let's not do that. Any other last question?
We invite themselves to unmute and ask verbal questions if they can.
Okay. If you have a question, unmute yourself and then we can just answer it and then we can close up. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, feel free to unmute. Yeah, your questions. Yeah.
Unmute means press the red microphone.
Yeah, the mute. Yeah, they just unmute. Yeah. I think there's someone. Okay, no more. Okay. Yeah, if not, you can leave. Yeah, yeah.
If not, you can leave. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I guess there's no questions. So thanks very much and hope to see you again next time. Bye-bye. Have a good weekend.
Okay, bye. I'm going to stop. Huh?